Good afternoon. My name is Lynette James, and I am a part of the IFA conferences team. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the first of three IFA annual convention GenieCasts, a webcast series designed to give you a sneak peek into what's in store for you at our 2018 annual convention for those of you who are already registered and to encourage those of you who are not yet registered to do so and join us in Phoenix this coming February. Before we begin, I'd like to invite Brad Dewitt from GenieCast to give you some brief yet very important instructions for how to get the most out of this experience. Brad?
Thanks, Lynette. Thank you, everybody, for joining today's cast. I'm really excited about it. So I'm just going to go over a few controls just to help you out on how to ask questions. So you should notice your toolbar at the bottom, and if you don't see it, you can simply just hover your cursor on your screen and it will appear. So if you'd like to chat your questions into Lynette, just click the chat icon, and then the chat box will appear for you to type your question. If you'd like to ask a live question when we open up for Q&A, just simply click the participants icon and then click the raise hand button. And then the other thing to help us out, if you could rename yourself if you want to ask a live question to your first and last name. It's also in that participants icon. And then if you hover over your own name, you will see a rename button. And then just type in your name, click rename, and it will reset it for you. I'm also going to provide some of this stuff in the chat as we go along. So there'll be some screenshots and stuff for you guys to see as well. Lynette, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Brad. I'm sure this is new to a lot of folks out there, and it is certainly new to me too, but I'm sure all will run smoothly, and if not, Brad will come to our rescue. Now let's get started. We are thrilled to kick off this webcast series with today's presenter, Stephen M.R. Covey, who spoke at our 2017 annual convention, and he was so well received, we had to invite him back. We are honored to have him on our speaker lineup for 2018. Stephen M.R. Covey is the New York Times and #1 Wall Street Journal bestselling author of The Speed of Trust, The One Thing That Changes Everything, which has been translated into over 20 languages worldwide. He is co-author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Smart Trust, The Defining Skill That Transforms Managers into Leaders. Stephen brings to his writings the perspective of a practitioner, as he is the former CEO of Covey Leadership Center, which under his stewardship became the largest leadership development company in the world. The company was valued at $2.4 million when Stephen was named CEO, and within 3 years, he grew shareholder value to $160 million in a merger he orchestrated with then Franklin Quest to form Franklin Covey. A Harvard MBA, Stephen co-founded Franklin Covey's Global Speed of Trust practice and currently speaks to audiences around the world. Now, I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Covey.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lynette, for that kind introduction. And welcome everyone to this special webcast. Excited to be with you today. And the topic I want to talk about for today is all about trust, what I call the speed of trust. And in particular, I'm going to try to relate this to your world as franchisees and as franchisors and having a franchise business. In fact, I'm going to make the claim that trust is truly the currency of franchising. Now, let me begin by sharing a story, if I could, with you. So a few years ago, I was in Tianjin, China, at the World Economic Forum, the Summer Davos. The date was September 28th of 2008, so about 9 years ago. Do you remember what was happening at that time? That was when we saw the global financial crisis really starting to kind of mushroom and blossom right in front of our eyes. Just 2 weeks earlier, Lehman Brothers had gone under. And when they went under, it caused a domino effect where other financial firms were failing. And you saw the stock markets crashing, not only in the United States, but all around the world. There was panic, there was fear. Kind of take yourself back in time and envision the kind of the crisis, the panic that was gripping the entire world. Well, it was in that context that the Economic Forum was held. And so that was the environment. At the very conclusion of this conference, they asked the participants to identify what they saw as the biggest challenge facing the world. Now, these participants, they're very informed. You have many heads of state. You have CEOs of major companies, academic leaders, a very informed audience. And they're asked, what's the biggest challenge facing the world? Now, again, remember, we're just a couple weeks into the mushrooming of this global financial crisis where people do not know if there's a bottom to it. Well, here's what came back as the participants' second biggest challenge. What they rated the second biggest challenge facing the world was the global financial crisis. The global financial crisis. And a lot of people were kind of surprised, even shocked. How could that only be number two? I mean, what could be bigger than what's happening right now? We don't know if there's a bottom to this. But I think the participants got it right, because what they rated as the number one challenge facing the world was the loss of trust and confidence. The loss of trust and confidence. And the reason I think they got it right is because if we lose trust and confidence, that exacerbates the global financial crisis. It exacerbates any type of crisis or situation or circumstance or relationship or team or organization. Think about it. It's really trust that makes our relationships work. It's trust that makes our world go round. You take away trust, everything slows down or even grinds to a halt. In a very real sense, trust is the currency of our global economy. Well, that's at a macro level. I would like to apply this at an industry level and then at a personal leadership level. Trust is also the currency of franchising. It is what makes franchising work. Trust is the currency of your leadership. You as a leader and your relationships, trust is the currency. It makes it all work. It makes it all go around. And it's never more important than in the franchising business, because yours is a relationship business. In fact, I was recently with Jim Amos. He's the founder and the former CEO of Mailboxes, etc., which ended up doing a major big deal with UPS, and now it's become the UPS store. But Mailboxes, etc., is an extraordinary franchising success, story, and where you have some 5,000 stores that are now part of the UPS stores. Jim Amos, the leader of this at the time, and he said this. He said, "Trust is the master value, because it's the foundation of any and every relationship, and relationships cannot survive without it. It is the currency. It makes our relationships work. It also makes our leadership work. And when we as leaders build trust, it changes everything. And so in franchising, this is never more important than now, because you think about it, there's so many relationships that we have. There's the relationship between the franchisor and the franchisee. That's also all based upon trust. It's the currency that makes that work or not work. Then as a franchisee, having a business, a franchise business, how about the trust that I have right there in my business, on my team, with my employees, with each other? How about the trust that we have as a franchise business with our customers and our clients? How about the trust that we have with the community? How about with other franchisees, peers? Trust makes all of this work, and it is the heart of relationships and of the franchise business. It is the currency. And so I kind of want to use that metaphor of trust being the currency, and then talk about three main points. And by the way, this is kind of a preview of what I'm going to be presenting in February in Phoenix at the IFA conference. And I hope to see you there. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to go much deeper then, because I'll have more time. I'm going to have some tools I'm going to give you. But I want to give you some big ideas that you can think about and be using before then. And kind of three main points. First, I want to show you that there's a business case for trust, how you can put a quantitative or economic value on trust and look at how it is impacting your business. Second, I want to show you that there's a leadership case for trust, how trust is really the one thing that changes everything in franchising and as a leader, and how if you get good at trust, it'll make you better at everything else. And third, I want to show you how trust is something that you can learn to create, to grow, to establish. And I want to give you a language and a framework and a process of how you can build trust on purpose. So that's the idea. Make a business case for trust, make a leadership case for trust, showing why this is so important, and then to show you that trust is learnable as a skill for you as a leader, for your business. Now, let me just briefly define trust. Here's a simple way of thinking about it. Trust is confidence. Confidence. The opposite of distrust is suspicion. So confidence versus suspicion. Now, here's a kind of a quick way of framing this. Think about someone who you work with right now and with whom you have a high trust relationship. So maybe it's, if you're the franchise owner, maybe it's the franchisor, corporate or whatever you call the home office. Or maybe it's a colleague or a peer. Or maybe it's one of your direct reports. Or maybe it's a customer, someone you trust. And let me ask you this question. What's it like to work with that person when you trust each other? How fast can you move? What kind of results do you get? Now, let me just shift gears and identify a second person. Think of someone that you don't trust, but you still have to work with them, even though you don't trust them. So again, it could be anyone, it could be someone at corporate, someone, a partner, someone in the office, a direct report, a boss. You got to work together, but you don't trust each other. Now, what's it like to work with that person without the trust? Everything takes longer, doesn't it? Costs more. See, there's a compelling business case for trust that we can all kind of identify by just comparing and contrasting, working with someone that you trust versus someone that you don't trust. Think about when there's trust in the franchisor-franchisee relationship, when people trust each other there, the speed at which you can move, and the low cost compared to when there's low trust. See, trust changes everything. We all know this. And I want to make this point very intentional and deliberate. So if I take those three main points, the three big ideas, first, the business case for trust. Here's the premise. Trust always affects two outcomes, always. Speed and cost. Speed and cost. And when the trust goes down in a relationship or on a team or in a company, in a business, or with partners, or with the franchisor, if you're the franchisee, or in any relationship, when the trust goes down, here's what you're going to find. The speed will go down with it. Everything will take you longer to do, a lot longer. And the cost will go up. Everything will cost you more to do, much more. Why? Because you got to take all these steps to compensate for that lack of trust. Well, that is a tax, a low trust tax. And the examples of that are all around us. Now, thankfully, the converse is equally real. And when that trust goes up in the relationship, like between the franchisor and franchisee, when the trust goes up, or when the trust goes up on the team, within your business, or with your people, or with your customers, or with the community, or in any environment, when the trust goes up, here's what you're going to find. The speed goes up with it. Everything happens faster, so much faster, and the cost comes down. It costs us less. Now that is a dividend, a high trust dividend. My friends, it's that simple, that powerful, that predictable, and it's playing out everywhere. Think of the high trust relationships that you have, the speed at which you can move. Think when you built trust with a customer, the speed at which you can move when it comes to a new opportunity and they're engaging in your products or your services. Think when there's high trust with a franchisor or franchisee and trust each other, the speed at which you can do things and to resolve problems and opportunities. See, speed happens when people trust each other, and nothing is as fast as the speed of trust. And that's the economics of trust. And the data on this is so overwhelming. I'll just cite one study. A Watson Wyatt study shows that high trust organizations outperform low trust organizations by 286% in total return to shareholders. 3 times higher. There's a 3 times multiplier to high trust. You perform better. There's economics to it. You can put a value on it for your business. The economics of trust, the speed of trust in action. That's kind of the first idea, the business case for trust. You can quantify this. And when we get together in February, I'll go deeper and give you some tools how you can get good at this. Now, the second point I want to make is how trust is the key dimension, the competency of leadership that is more important than any other today. And I can give you a whole host of reasons as to why. And when I am with you in February, I'll go a lot deeper into this. Today, I just want to give you one reason why, as a leader, trust is the most important thing you can do. And I'm really speaking to you as a franchise business and building a team and an organization. Well, I know one of the biggest challenges in franchising today is attracting and retaining our people, and to engage them, to inspire them, and to keep them. And in most franchise business have a shortage of people, and attracting, retaining great people is a needed opportunity and challenge for you. Well, it's so interesting. Increasingly, our workforce is being filled with more and more millennials. Many of you yourselves are millennials, and the data is coming out. It's estimated that by 2020, 50% of the workforce will be millennials. Well, a recent study by Deloitte shows that millennials really want a style of leadership and management that is open, that is transparent, that is built on trust, and where they are trusted. They want to be trusted. And so if you as a leader can build trust with your team and can extend trust to your team in smart ways and can trust your people, that will inspire them like nothing else. They'll be engaged like nothing else, and they'll stay with you. A study from the Great Place to Work Institute, which really focuses on building workplace trust, shows that when you build trust among the millennials, that doesn't just have a 2 or 3 times greater probability of keeping them. It has a 25 times greater probability of impacting millennials wanting to stay with you. So this is not just some little increase. This is a huge increase of attracting, retaining, engaging, inspiring your people. They'll stay with you. And that's just one dimension of leadership, attracting, retaining, engaging your people that trust builds. I could go into collaboration, partnering, teaming, innovating, executing your strategy, building great teams and organizations. Trust changes everything. But get good at this, you'll move every other needle with it. There's a leadership case for trust that's overwhelming. It also makes it a lot more fun and exciting and energizing for your people. I recently was with the Dwyer Group, and they're a company that's built on values. You know a lot about some of their brands, Mr. Electric, Mr. Appliance, and Mr. Handyman, and so forth. And one of their values is that we have fun in the process. It's all about building a great culture that's fun, that's energizing, and trust does that more than anything else you might do. Now, the last point I want to mention, and then we'll open it up for some of your questions, is how trust is a learnable skill. And this is where in our session in February, I'm going to really go deep, because most people know that trust is important. Kind of those first 2 points, the business case, the leadership case, people kind of intuitively get that. At least they sense that trust matters. Now, in February, I'll go much deeper as to why. I'll make strong economic connections as to why it matters. But intuitively, my guess is you get it. But this third point, that trust is learnable, is where we kind of often just give lip service to it. I've heard people just say, hey, you got to build trust. Got to build trust with your team. Got to build trust with the home office. Got to build trust with your customers. And so often people don't say, and here's how you do it. Well, I want to give you a preview of how we do it. And then again, in February, we'll go really deep in this, and I'll give you some practical, tangible tools that you can take with you. But I'll give you a preview of those now, a framework and a language and a process of how you can build trust on purpose, intentionally, as a leader, and on your team and in your business and with your partner. And so here's the idea. Trust is really built on 2 key things. It's built first on our credibility, and second on our behavior. So trust is a function of our credibility and of our behavior. Credibility and behavior. Credibility and behavior. Those are the building blocks for how we build trust. But we've got to make sure that we start on the inside and move out, meaning we start with ourselves. Do I trust myself? Do I give to my team a leader that I can trust? Have I built a high trust business, high trust organization? Then that then puts us in a position to build trust with all our other partners and relationships that we have. Inside out, working on our credibility, our behavior, inside out. I'm going to give you an example of this in just a minute of how Cheryl Batchelder, the former CEO of Popeyes, which has had an extraordinary, remarkable run over those last 8 years under her leadership, and she just transitioned out in the last 6 months or so, after this huge successful run, and how she worked from the inside out, starting with herself as a leader and with Popeyes, the franchisor, then building trust with the franchisees, the 2,500 plus stores, and building great trust there through credibility and behavior. So I'm going to give you an illustration of that in just a moment. But the credibility dimensions that you focus on are kind of on the character side and the competence side. You look at integrity and intent flowing from your character. You look at capabilities and results flowing from your competence. And again, I'll go much deeper into that and give you some tools you can use in February. But credibility comes first. Then you move into behavior. And behavior is kind of what we do and how we do it. It's not enough just to talk about trust. We have to put it into action. We have to put it into practice. So behaviors like talking straight and demonstrating respect and creating transparency and righting wrongs and showing loyalty and delivering results and getting better, meaning continuously improving and confronting reality, clarifying expectations, practicing accountability, listening first, keeping commitments, extending trust. Those are high leverage behaviors. They help you as a leader grow trust, helps your team grow trust, your franchise grow trust in any relationship. And so credibility and behavior are the two building blocks. So let me, again, use Cheryl as an example. And when I'm with you in February, I'm going to give you tools that show how trust is built from the inside out. They'll be in the form of these cards. So on the credibility side, there's kind of 4 dimensions, 2 that flow from your character, 2 that flow from your competence. What Cheryl picked as the CEO of Batchelder is the idea that we've got to focus on our intent. And her intent was to focus on the franchisee, again, because Cheryl is representing corporate, Popeyes corporate. And her number one goal was to treat the franchisee as their number one customer and to build a high trust relationship with the franchisee. And when she came in 2007, they'd had 4 CEOs in the prior 7 years. They'd been turning over. There was kind of lower trust. And she came in and she changed the whole dynamic and said, look, we're going to focus on you and building the relationship of trust with you, the franchisee. She declared her intent to them. And her motto of leadership was servant leadership. We're here to serve. We're here to help you succeed. And she declared that. And that was powerful. So that was kind of the credibility side, focusing on, we're going to work on ourselves first. And our intent is to build trust with you and to help you succeed. We're here to serve you. That was kind of intent. Then the behavior, she really exhibited all of the behaviors. There's 13. I kind of just briefly gave you them by name, but I'll highlight the key ones that they picked. And by the way, she and I co-authored an article that we just published through Franchising World that you can get off the Franchising World website or off my Twitter at Stephen M. R. Covey. But the article highlights the 4 behaviors that she kind of really focused on to build trust in the relationship between franchisor and franchisee. And by the way, she also applied these ideas and these behaviors right there with her own team to build trust on her team as well. But she focused on listen first, because you got to listen to each other to understand each other, to build trust with each other. And then create transparency, because people don't trust what they can't see. So she said, let's let them see it. Open it up, nothing to hide. Opened up more and more the data, the financials, etc. Then she focused on delivering results, because nothing builds trust as fast as delivering, performing, coming through. And then finally, on extending trust, giving trust, trusting her franchisees, extending trust to them. And then they reciprocate and give the trust right back. And now, look, she focused on all the behaviors, but those 4 in particular, she got really good at. The result was she and Popeyes, they built trust with the franchisees. And this impacted everything. They could move faster, less cost, and they saw the whole business going up. And they saw their revenues go up 45% in each store on average. Their profits more than doubled in each store. Their market share went up from 14% to 27%. And the value of the enterprise went up 5 times plus. And everyone is succeeding better. It really was servant leadership. And they got these great results. And she modeled it. She led this out. And all stakeholders were, with this higher trust, they got better economics in every way. It's a great example. And another illustration of the trust that was built. Well, there's 2 examples. One is that 95% of the franchisees rated, outstanding the leadership that they had, the confidence that they had in the leadership of Popeyes corporate. That's quite extraordinarily high. And then also they did a remodel of their stores, and that they offered to people. Over 85% of the franchisees did the remodel within 3 years. As you know, in a system like that, that's pretty remarkable. That's based on the fact there's such trust that's there that this is going to be better for everybody. So I highlight them as an example of the speed of trust in action and how trust is learnable. You could look at Dominos, a similar thing. Their stock was at $3 or $4 in 2009. Today it's about $200, and they behaved their way into greater trust, first internally, and then second with their customers. And they were transparent, they talked straight, they built the trust, they righted wrongs, they improved their formula, the taste of their product, and they got better. It's just a great example of behaving their way into greater trust. I could go on and on and on with examples and stories. My point is this: trust is learnable. There's a framework, a language, and a process of how you can build trust on purpose. And you can do that in the marketplace with customers, and you can do that in the workplace with your own people, with your team, with your organization. You can turn trust into your greatest strength as a business and for you as a leader. And there's a methodology. And so in February, I hope you come because I want to give you the tools and have you walk out, and you'll know in a very practical, tangible way how I can build trust as a leader. All right, so those are the 3 main points I wanted to highlight this morning, how trust has economic implications, not just social. That's the first point. The second point, how trust is the #1 competency of leadership because it affects every other competency, including your ability to attract and retain great people, which is so important today. And then most importantly, the third point, how there's a framework and a language and a process to build trust on purpose and to turn this into your greatest strength. So that's kind of the premise of why and how trust is the currency of franchising. And I would also say of leadership. And I assume that everyone on this call is a leader. Let's get good at building trust. So with that, Lynette, let's go ahead and open this up to questions. And I kind of want to go with wherever you want to go, what's on your mind, to go deeper into this idea as we give this preview, before the February session.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Covey, for such a great and insightful presentation on such an important topic, not only for business specifically, but just in life in general. I'd now like to open the cast to questions from our participants. We have some that have come in via the chat, but for those who have not yet submitted questions, I encourage you to take full advantage of this unique opportunity. Don't be shy. You just need to raise your hand if you'd like to pose a question via video, or simply type your question into the chat box if you'd like me to read it out loud. I'm going to start with a question from Dwight Lamb. The question, Mr. Covey, is the language, framework, and process for deliberately growing trust the same in an over-the-phone conversation? Does it differ whether you're on the phone or in person?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dwight, because we're in different environments, aren't we? Today, the workforce is increasingly distributed, virtual. I mean, even look at this webcast, this GenieCast that we're doing together. let me say this. The principles are the same. The particular practices might differ and vary based upon the context, but the principles are the same, except for this. When we're in virtual environments like on the phone, it's even more important to be intentional and to be deliberate about it, because we may not have that quite, face-to-face body language and proximity that so often helps us build trust a little bit easier and better and faster when we're right together. When we see each other, we can kind of read each other a little bit better. Sometimes when we're not, when we're apart from each other and it's just distributed, we may not be together. It's more important that I am deliberate and intentional and I call it out. So I declare my intent and I say things like, team, here's what we're trying to do. Here is why we're trying to do it. I always give the why behind the what. Here's my intent. Here's my agenda. Here's my motive. I have nothing to hide. It's an open agenda, not a hidden agenda. And I declare it. And so I'm more intentional about it, more deliberate about it. I call it out more. I clarify expectations even more deliberately. And so that I know that we all know we're on the same page of what we're trying to do. So the principles are the same, but it's more important to be deliberate about calling it out, declaring intent, and being explicit about what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. Because you don't have the benefit of the proximity and the body languages, and the body language. So being more explicit is even at a greater premium than before. So principles always apply. Practices will change and vary based upon culture, based upon context. I might do it a little bit differently. But I would say it's even more important in such an environment to be intentional about building trust.
Great, thanks so much. So the next question I'm going to go to, there's two questions that are similar. I'm going to try to merge them together.
Okay.
The question is, does trust have international barriers, or is it the same for all Western cultures? And just to continue with that is, how do you address intercultural trust?
Yeah, great questions. And we're working really all around the world in over 100 countries on this. So trust is a universal global phenomenon, applies everywhere. The principles do. But the question really is insightful, the two questions, because there are cultural implications that might vary. So the principles apply everywhere. It's almost similar to like the discussion of, being in person versus being distributed or virtual or on the phone. There's different applications of it, different practices of it, but the principles still apply. Same with global. I myself have presented Speed of Trust in 46 countries in the last few years, all around the world. And so I've seen these differences, but the principles apply everywhere. Here are the two key principles that will help you in a global environment. And by the way, we've done work with some franchisors that are global, that are working all around the world. The two key behaviors: listen first, and then demonstrate respect for what you hear. If you'll do this, if you come in and listen first, and then show respect for what you hear, you'll be amazed at how that will enable you to build trust, because people will feel understood. They'll feel valued. Listening first and demonstrating respect does not necessarily mean that you agree with them. You may not. It just means you understand them and you're starting with their framework. If you'll do that as you cross cultures, countries, boundaries, differences in style and approach, people will feel understood. And then from that, you can become creative and synergistic and maybe come up with new alternatives and build a relationship of trust. So the principles are the same. The practices will vary by culture, by application. Start with those two behaviors. Listen first, demonstrate respect for what you hear. That'll be a great starting point to build the trust as you go around, around the world or in different environments, different cultures, different constructs.
Very helpful. Next, we have, what are the most obvious elements of mistrust in a brand?
I would say this: the mistrust will happen when, in a brand, when there's a couple of things. One is that we don't do what we say we're going to do. You think about it. You have your brand promise. You stand for something. That's basically telling people, here's what we're going to do. Here's what our brand stands for. Here's what we deliver. Here's what we do, what we deliver. Then if there's a gap, and then we don't do what we say we're going to do, we don't deliver on the brand promise, then that will cause you to lose trust. We say it, we don't do it, we don't deliver. We don't do what we say we're going to do. Trust goes down. That's true not only of a brand, it's true of a company, it's true of a person. If I say it and then don't do it, that people say, I can't trust that leader. I can't trust Stephen. I can't trust that person. They don't do what they say they're going to do. So think about brand equity. You have a brand promise, you then deliver on that brand promise. That builds brand equity. That's trust. Trust with the customer, trust with the market. That's trust in your brand. You know, a brand is really trust monetized. And so you do what you say you're going to do, you deliver. That's one of the key things. And so having the behaviors that help you build the trust is vital. I will also say this, that I could take the dimensions of credibility, I call them the 4 cores of credibility, which I'll go deeper into when we're together. The integrity and intent flowing from your character, the capabilities and results flowing from your competence. If I'm lacking in any one of those cores of credibility, that will impact my brand, the company's brand. In other words, if I don't get results, I won't have the trust I need. If I don't have capabilities, if I'm not current and relevant, I will lose the trust. If I don't have the intent of seeking mutual benefit and helping others succeed and focus on others and their win, if I'm seen as self-serving and not focusing on mutual benefit, I will lose the trust. If I don't have integrity, that's a non-starter. I won't even get out of the gates. Any one of those 4 cores of credibility, if I'm lacking any one of those, will dilute and harm a brand. So again, coming back to the idea of credibility and behavior, a lack of credibility, any of the 4 cores, or we don't behave our way into trust. We talk about it, but don't do it. We don't do what we say we're going to do. That will cause us to lose trust. And those tend to be the 2 big gaps, a gap in credibility or a gap in behavior. So getting good at credibility and behavior is, again, how we build our brands, how we build our organization, how we build our team, how we build the trust in us and each of us as a leader. So really we can apply the idea of credibility and behavior at every level. First in me as a leader, second in the team, third in our organization, fourth in our brand to the marketplace, to the customer. But it's still the same principles, credibility, behavior. And that's where I want to give you practical tools to get good in those 2 dimensions.
Thanks, Stephen. Next, we have other than leading by example. Can you talk about some tangible ways to ingrain trust into the culture of the brand?
Yes. Tangible ways to ingrain trust. Well, you did mention the first one. I'm glad that you started with that, which is leading by example, because that is critical. Because that way people say, look, this is not just talk, this is actually what we do. And that does matter. But I would say this, that each of those 13 behaviors are practical and tangible. So if I could use Dominos as an example, think about it. Most people are familiar with their extraordinary turnaround. You know, again, I mentioned how their stock price had gone down to about $4, even under in 2009. Today, it's about almost $200, 50 times increase. And it's not just the stock price, it's the value of the creating value for customers and the brand and for their own people. Well, think about what they did. They confronted the reality. They did so many of these 13 behaviors. They confronted reality that they had an issue and a problem. And the problem was that they designed their company to deliver pizza fast, but it wasn't great tasting pizza at the time. They confronted that reality. And they said, we got to get better, another behavior that builds trust. And let's right the wrong, so to speak, by improving the quality of our pizza. And they were very open about it and transparent. They talked straight. And they said to the customer, we listened. They went to the customer, they listened. You don't like the quality of our pizza. You like that it's fast, but you want it higher quality. So they got better. They improved. They confronted the reality. They did basically almost all the behaviors just naturally. They implemented them. They applied them. It wasn't just talk. It was action. They put it into practice. And they improved their formula. They got better. And the extraordinary thing about it is they went out to the marketplace. And if you'll remember some of the ads they ran, they actually showed going to customers and then the customer saying, yeah, this pizza tastes like cardboard. And they were up front. And then they came back with the new pizza, try it. They were open, they were transparent, they declared their intent, and the customer likes it now, and they got better. They put it into practice. They behaved their way into greater trust. Now, Patrick Doyle, the CEO, he sent me an email in which he said, you know what? The reason we gained such trust with the customers is because we first applied the same concepts with ourselves. We talk about honesty with customers. Well, we also are honest with ourselves about how we needed to change to improve and get better. So they truly went inside out, and they applied the behaviors that help build trust to themselves first, which then it becomes an extension now to apply it with their customers. So you do that, you actually get into the practice of this, you'll move the needle on trust. It will follow. You can turn this into your greatest strength.
Okay, I think I'm going to have time for two more questions. One, okay. Mr. Covey, which is really quickly. There are a couple folks wanting to know how they get access to the trust cards before convention.
Well, before the convention, I'd say come to the conference to get them.
Great answer.
Well, yeah. It is not just because I'm trying to prime the pump and get you at the conference. It's because that's where we give them out. We don't just give out the cards. We always want to give context with the cards. So the cards are part of the framework, the language, the process of how you can build trust on purpose. Otherwise, it's just a deck of cards. It won't be as valuable to you. But in the Speed of Trust book, we'll go deeper. The Speed of Trust website, speedoftrust.com, you can go deeper. The physical tools we'll have at the conference for you. And then there are ways that you can get these cards after the conference to go deeper with your team that you can learn about at the event itself. But so you can understand the 13 behaviors, the 4 cores through the book, through the website, go deeper, and then the cards will be at the conference.
Okay, I'm going to ask one last question. If we can answer it in just a couple of minutes. What is the best way to start to rebuild trust that has been broken within a franchise system, particularly when there might not be complete alignment with some of the franchisees in the system?
Okay, yeah, really good question. Here's a principle. You can't talk your way out of a problem that you behaved your way into. So think about that. If we've lost people's trust through our behavior, the only way to get it back is through our behavior. We have to behave our way into trust. We can't just talk our way into trust. So we have to put it into practice, into action. And again, maybe we've lost their trust. Maybe they've lost our trust. And it's often and maybe usually both directions, where we both have kind of maybe in some ways fallen short. And you're right, sometimes there's some misalignment. And that's why things like, in the FDDs, the franchise disclosure documents, being upfront about that, being transparent, talking straight to make sure we try to get that alignment up front, that is important, so that we don't kind of say one thing and then do another, or kind of spin something that's not quite there, and then we realize there's a misalignment of interests. So you do the best that you can to align interests as best you can. But then you have to kind of do your best to confront the reality that maybe we don't have the trust. That's one of the behaviors. To practice accountability, one of the behaviors, which is to own it, take responsibility for it. Then the right, the wrong, to try to make it right when you're wrong. To then clarify or maybe re-clarify expectations going forward of how we can build the greater trust as we move forward. And then the most important thing will be to keep the commitments, to then do what we just said we're going to do as we clarify or re-clarify expectations and behave our way into greater trust. I'll give you a good illustration of this. You take Alpha Graphics, they're the copy store and the like, and when Mike Whitty was the CEO, there was kind of a misalignment of some of these interests, where the feeling was that, gosh, we're not quite aligned between the franchisor and franchisee. And he came in and he kind of confronted this reality that there was some misalignment. And he practiced accountability, took responsibility, and he got a franchise council together, and they said, let's go through the contract. And they went through the contract and they said, look, this is a little bit one-sided in too many different areas. Let's address this, let's confront this, because they weren't performing as well as they wanted to and they needed to. And so they confronted it. They took it head on. They listened. They synergized. They created. They came up with something that was more aligned towards mutual benefit, win-win. They created a new agreement. They then offered it to the entire system. They said, look, you can stay with the current agreement if you want, because we've already agreed to that. Or if you want, you can go to this new agreement that we've built that most people feel like is more aligned towards mutual benefit, win-win. You know what? 95% plus of the people went to the new agreement, and they saw a dramatic turnaround in the alignment and of the trust level through this process, and they behaved their way into greater trust and, more importantly, even greater performance for the franchisees and ultimately for the franchisor by aligning those interests. Now, was that easy? No. Is that the way you do it in every case? Maybe not, because there are different circumstances, situations. My point, though, is that you behave your way into trust, just like you behave your way out of trust. And we can become intentional about this and deliberate about this. Alfred Braddock approached this from a standpoint of mutual benefit. Win-win is the only sustainable solution in an interdependent world of franchisor and franchisee. Cheryl Batchelder approached it from Popeyes that we have to build high trust between us as a franchisor with our franchisee partners. And without that, there's too much tax that we're paying. So it's just a matter of kind of framing it in your world. I'm going to try to give you tools to help you assess how best to approach this in your world. It's not the answer itself. You got to come up with the answer. I'm going to give you a framework and a language and a process to become intentional and deliberate about moving the needle on trust, no matter where you're at. If you're here, let's go to here. If you're here, let's go to here, to go to a higher level of trust as the currency of your franchise business and of your leadership as a leader.
Thank you so much, Mr. Covey. Just a couple minutes beyond scheduled time. I want to bring this cast to the close. On behalf of the IFA, Mr. Covey, thank you for lending us your time and expertise. Thank you to all of our participants for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. We hope you enjoyed the cast. I know that we did. For more information on our 2018 annual convention and to register so you can see Mr. Covey live and in living color, visit www.franchise.org/convention. It was a pleasure spending this time with you, and we look forward to seeing you all in Phoenix this February. Have a great afternoon. Thanks again, Mr.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Lynette. See you all in Phoenix.